Buffalo Bills fans, it has come, it has gone. The much anticipated, much awaited, much talked about, and scrutinized, and continuously will be for the foreseeable future Buffalo Bills 2018 NFL Draft is finally through. We are now playing the waiting game, and for those draftniks kind of like myself who just kind of love the whole thing, you kind of get that draft fatigue at the final week to 2 weeks. You just kind of wanted to get there till 2019. Get to take a breath and decompress. The draft class is finalized. It was finished yesterday. Obviously, this draft class will be talked about for one person and one person only. It's Josh Allen. Josh Allen was the guy that a lot of us, including myself, did not want in Buffalo. And for lack of a better term, just didn't give him any type of chance. I myself was very much a party to that. I barely looked at any of his games. I barely watched anything. I'd hear pundits and people that were positive about him. I'd kind of tune it out and just watch some of the missed throws and stuff, and then I would kind of bask and bathe in the narrative or the that I liked, the confirmation bias of he is inaccurate, he just looks the part. So it depended on what side of the fence you were on. If you liked Baker Mayfield, you steered away from the Johnny Manziel comparisons and the air raid offense, the no defense playing in the in that conference where he played at, or in the Pac-10, where Pac-12, sorry, where these conferences, they change them, they realign them so much I can't make heads or tails. So if I got those wrong, I apologize. Where Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen play. So again, with Allen, it's the level of competition, it's or the lack thereof of talent. But let's just, he's a Buffalo Bill, and now that he is a Buffalo Bill, it is totally predicated upon the organization to foster, provide, and surround him with the best environment possible to be the best possible player that he can be for us as fans, themselves as an organization, to justify their investments in him, because that is a big deal. Organizations seem to have two quarterbacks that they had identified. I was wrong. My friend Eric was correct. Sam Darnold was the other quarterback. I thought the other one was Josh Rosen. It wasn't. Turns out it was Josh Allen. And I'll use a term that he said, that he used, humble warrior. And if you look at Josh Allen, you kind of reflect back, he embodies that, a self-made guy, a guy who used his physical attributes, his tools, his measurables, his outer worldly arm, combination of size and athleticism to get him to this point, which is a top 10 pick in the NFL draft as a quarterback, playing at the levels that he did. And if you kind of harken back to the, let's just say the 90s, 80s, maybe even early 2000s, this kid probably would have been the first overall pick just given those attributes alone. Big fan of his was Bruce Arians. I respect Bruce Arians' opinion about quarterbacks. He was a big fan of Josh Allen. Said that if he had come out last year, the Arizona Cardinals would have made a massive move to try to get him, and that he felt like he was the best quarterback for a pro-style scheme, knew how to change protections, knew how to call plays in the huddle, and that is huge. If we haven't come to realize that yet, a lot of these quarterbacks do not spend a lot of time under center. They do not call plays in the huddle. They very rarely, if often, change the protections at the line of scrimmage, or can identify those, how to change them. So that's a huge step. Then he explained and elaborated how that puts a quarterback so much far ahead of the game. Brandon Beane spoke, clarified some things about the tweets, about their plan for him going forward. Said that and it kind of allayed some of those weather questions that has gotten us Bills fans up in arms, even for some of us that don't live in Erie, Western New York, Buffalo area like myself. I do not. I know several other fans that don't either, and the weather thing really got and became an irritant to our ears, and just noise pollution that we wanted no part of. I can only imagine for those of you who live up there. And he said, well, they would have drafted him if they played in a dome, so that kind of just quelled that. Also, that Dable had put together a plan for every one of the quarterbacks. Had they identified one of them, I probably believe that they were apprised of the decision, who the two guys were, because they weren't in a prime position to get any of the quarterbacks, really. They had to trade up along with Arizona, who traded up 2 picks behind Buffalo to take Josh Rosen at 10. So the Bills did pass on Josh Rosen. They had the choice. They passed. So we have to now know that Josh Allen was the other quarterback that they had identified. The other quarterback, Sam Darnold, lands here in New Jersey, New Jersey, with the New York Jets. That is going to be an interesting storyline going forward. This division is going to go into a massive shift within the next year or two. Brady is very much in the twilight of his career, as we all know, given everything we know about the Tom versus Time, just the connotation of that title alone, the whole riff, shaky ground now at One Patriot Place with the power brokers. Brady, very much one of them. He is the main catalyst for that success, but make no mistake, Belichick is a big party to it. He is a mastermind at game plan adjustments within game, manipulating the rosters, manipulating the rules to his benefit and his team's, of course, ownership. So it's very much a fluid situation up there. Who knows when that all comes to pass? But if you were to put a realistic time frame on it, given everybody's age, prior success, I say it's very much year to year right now with the New England Patriots. It's very much now truly a year-to-year program, and once it ends, it will be a triumvirate of 3 of the greatest to do their respective jobs, either coaching or playing, in Rob Gronkowski, Bill Belichick, and Tom Brady, the greatest coach, the greatest quarterback, and the greatest tight end. That is something the Bills, as we all know, as our team, have had to combat for almost a decade with those 3 together, and two decades with Belichick and Brady. So it has been like having a 20,000-pound gorilla in this division for so long. And when other teams' fans try to talk down about the Bills and try to spew rhetoric about how unsuccessful, granted, I've said it many times, a lot of that is of their own making. Ownership change, constant regime change, never a clear, concise plan in place. People at One Bills Drive with their own agendas, dilapidated facilities, ownership not putting fiscal resources into the coaching, just a lot of things. And hopefully, again, the worm has turned. There's a new day, a new era ahead. And it started off positively last year. There were some hiccups, but in the end, to have broken the drought, to have gotten into playoffs, make a very, very representative appearance in it, given that they were just probably 1 play away from possibly winning that game, or 2, would have been huge. Probably 2 plays, but it would have been huge. And just to make the appearance alone was just as huge. So again, let's keep our fingers crossed. But back to Josh Allen, they went for the prototype, the physical freak, the movement, the measurables, the ability to play inside the pocket, outside the pocket. So there's not a thing they feel like they cannot do with him, so he's not pigeonholed into one type of offense, to whereas they felt maybe Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen, they kind of are what they are, and you're going to really have to work to get them and have certain things around them in order to maximize who they are. Not to say Josh Allen will not need that, he definitely will, but has the tools to just manifest into something more, given all those physical gifts that he has, and having come from a pro-style system. Maybe he's a little bit ahead of the game mentally. By all accounts, he was the best quarterback on the whiteboard. He blew blew everybody away on the board, no matter what team you spoke to. He was definitely in the conversation with other teams for their pick. You heard a lot of chatter, a lot of murmurings, whether it was from Cleveland, the Jets, the two preceding teams that took quarterbacks ahead of the Bills, that he was in their mix. Coaches making late pushes. The week prior, Josh Allen could have been the first overall pick. So depending on who you spoke to, you were either in the Josh Allen corner or you were firmly entrenched in it. So he had his fans, no doubt about it, and a lot of those fans come with a lot of street cred, if you will. John Elway, Bruce Arians, Chris and Phil Simms, a lot of the national pundits, talking heads like Mel Kiper were big on him. So again, it is now a true wait-and-see game. Hopefully, the Bills, Brandon Beane said he's going to be given an opportunity to earn the job, but prudence is really paramount here for me. They need to, I firmly believe they, took note of the, and I called WGR with this point today. It was on at the end of the first hour, I believe. A lot of buzz over there with the Sabres winning the draft lottery, which is huge. If you listen to the radio just for the Bills, you couldn't help but get caught up with the Sabres because they are the other pro team in town, and the first tank, if you will, getting Eichel. Now this guy Rasmus Dahlin, I believe his name is. That's huge. So if you guys are intertwined fans of the Sabres, you guys must be really, really happy today. I watch from afar here in Jersey. I root for them, so hopefully this guy turns out to be everything he's purported to be and more. So the Peterman mistake, and not just a mistake for the player, just the national embarrassment that it became. It really did become the butt of a joke. They were a bit of a laughingstock for about a week before they restored Tyrod Taylor as a starting quarterback and were able to go on the road and win in KC, which was massive. Generally the house of horrors, whether KC's in Buffalo or they're back at Arrowhead, that's generally where the Buffalo Bills season would die, and it did not in that case, as we all know, and that kind of calmed the waters a bit. So that mistake alone, given the epic disaster that it was with the interceptions and just you just don't want to do that kind of psychological damage to a young player. And Peterman looks like a strong guy. He looks like he's able to weather it. But when you have your first-round quarterback, that you've invested in Josh Allen, you do not want to do that to him in any way. You don't want to put him in a disadvantageous position like that on the road against the pass rush of that ilk that the Chargers can bring at you. So I think lesson learned there. They are going to be very, very, they're going to take the slow cooker approach here. I firmly believe this. The negatives, obviously, we know. The completion percentage, was it attributed to the surrounding players? Was it attributed to, who knows? Maybe trying to do too much, maybe not taking the safe play rather than trying to take the big play. Does his best work on the move, as we do know. I see, when he gets his feet set in the pocket, he really does drive the football. He throws like a guy his size, whereas you see sometimes bigger guys. I harken back to EJ. Once he got to the pros, he didn't drive the football. He kind of lollipopped the football, didn't put a lot of pronation into it. It was more of just a loft rather than a real concise drop. His footwork was often choppy and became very mentally fragile once those failures started to mount and the organization was fractured as what to do with him. So looking back on that, even though this regime was not part of that, they really need to look back at that. They were part of these two guys were around the maturation of a Cam Newton. They need to see what went well there, see what went wrong there with that, and adjust accordingly and move on. But knowing that Dable has a plan in place for this kid, or for any of the quarterbacks that would have drafted, is massive. And I know I'm talking a lot about Josh because this is the draft. It is about Josh Allen. So again, Sal on WGR again, keep referencing them because they're pretty much our Bills resource. They're their only. There's some other people in town to talk about the Bills, but not with the extent that they do. They really put a lot of into it through this whole thing for the amount of time that it was. It was just, they were never truly in a position to get a quarterback from Jump Street, 21, 22, then the trade up, and then all the Tyrod trade. So everybody knew that they were going to go all in for the quarterback, and they did. And, again, he said muddy waters. You either heard the muddy waters about Josh and just were totally tainted by them. He was tainted by them. And then the tweets, done by 15, 16-year-old Josh Allen. The tweets had been deleted back in January. I learned that day before. I think it was, no, I actually learned that day before yesterday or yesterday, after I did the live vid, the live reaction. And somebody waited to drop those right on draft day. So, it left the pick sans all the questions about the accuracy level of competition with a little bit of a black eye explaining to do. It seems to have been rectified on the surface a little bit. Tim Graham did a nice article today in the Buffalo News about, Josh taking in a teammate, a black teammate that is homeless, a Latin civic teacher that coached him, that says that this is not who this kid is. I urge you to go read that. Give him time, give him a chance, and let's see how this thing goes. This team now, I'll do a long view at the end of this, but this is the potential franchise quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, and not having touched that number 22, they were able to retain that pick, which was massive, trading only the 2-2s to move up to get Josh Allen. They possibly get their centerpiece. A lot of fanfare were all about this pick, including myself, in the interim, in the initial wave reaction, first reaction. This was the pick everybody was more excited about in Tremaine Edmunds. I mean, you look at the guy, he's the guy even Josh Allen, he's the guy you invent on Madden. He's the guy you make as your linebacker. Both of them, whether it's the quarterback, but this is now about Tremaine Edmunds. They were both the archetypes. The Da Vinci. You draw them up, and that's how you draw them up. This for the Mike linebacker, which McDermott said he was going to start out in the defense, is Tremaine Edmunds. What a physical specimen! And I didn't realize he was 19. What, with room to grow, unbelievable. And one of the really interesting things you watch when his game is how he diagnoses pretty well. You've seen him fill in the run game, run and chase, guys trying to quick hitters, screens. He's long, and whether he's able to deflect the ball, run a guy down from the backside, force a guy to flow back, it's a huge thing. So the level of athleticism in the second level of the Bills defense went from sun to the moon. I've repeated that several times. Sideline to sideline linebacker at his size to run a 4.54. I'm sorry, unprecedented. The football family, the lineage. His brother drafted. Some people thought he was overdrafted, but albeit he was drafted in the first round by the Pittsburgh Steelers. His father played in the NFL, so this kid. And when speaking at the introductory press conference, he's very humble, very quiet, not a big social media user. So he seems like, again, what my friend Eric, humble warrior, and that's kind of a word that I'm gonna have, and I'll credit him with from now on. Is that's what they really want to go after is humble warriors, guys that are not about the me, but more about the we. So. And I think if you look at it and if we reflect back and kind of slow ourselves down instead of getting caught up in the hype and we all wanted to take sides and get in the corner of the quarterback that we wanted, you can look back and see why Darnold and Allen were those guys in the end, sans all their physical attributes and their ability. But back to Edmunds, a joker. A joker that you don't have to just stick him in the middle. He can move everywhere. You don't know where he's lining up. He can do a lot of different things, has some rush ability. Definitely looks like he plays the run well. And to have Lorenzo Alexander in that locker room, a guy who's been through everything, a guy who did not get drafted, a guy who moved everywhere to just stay in the league. And the guy I said was the best defensive player on the field for both teams in that playoff game against Jacksonville. And given them the talent level on that defense, that is saying something. So to have that guy as a sounding board, absolutely invaluable for Edmunds, for McDermott, for that defense. It's hopefully this is a huge thing that they got two centerpieces of their teams on either side of the ball for the next decade plus, and I'm really excited, really excited. Some of the other picks, I mean, the draft class, there was a lot of fanfare with the third pick, the third round, with Horrible Harry, as his Twitter name is, Harrison Phillips, a guy the Bills really showed interest in from the beginning, whether it was at the Senior Bowl, the Combine. It just seemed like they were always getting connected to this guy, and you kind of look at his background, the wrestler, the strength in the bench press was unprecedented. You know, physical, stout guy who can keep those bodies fresh in the middle, particularly Kyle at his age. You really want to keep Kyle fresh, keep as many of the big bodies off of him. And once you saw they traded Darius last year, when Darius would ever be available or he ever felt like playing, which was very few and far between, Kyle's body often took the brunt and it took a toll, but he still has been, given his age and some of his injuries that he's been able to overcome, is still playing at a very high level. So to have a guy like Harrison Phillips, they got Star Lotulelei in free agency. I mean, Kyle Williams must be like a pig rolling in you know what right now, knowing that he's got these guys to really keep him fresh. And you had to believe last season, I mean, a pick like this, a signing like Star, McDermott's sitting back during those Jets, that Jet game away on Thursday, that Saints game at home, where they both games they really got steamrolled in the run game, just physically bullied around the field. You had to believe he's sitting there and Beans up in the box, you know, processing, hey, we're not going to allow this to happen again. We got to address the middle of this defense, and it was a clear mandate that was the goal, was to build this defense, this team, offensively and defense through the middle, which leads me to the next pick was Teron Johnson, Weber State small school guy. Nickel corner, versatile. More famously got hit in the face at the combine by a ball during the gauntlet drill. But if you notice during that drill, he didn't stop. It didn't affect him. He just kept going, and he caught the ball well. He was very natural, very smooth at catching the football, so that's encouraging. He's obviously going to play on special teams, probably all three phases, and McDermott. Most coaches either give that lip service or don't, but it is a big point of emphasis. People often say, oh, for the Bills, be more like Belichick. Well, listen to Belichick talk about special teams. Usually on Fridays, he'll just gush and gush and gush, and it's important. You know, he talks about having left-footed punters and different types of return. He's very adamant about special teams, and that it is the truth. You will. I always think about a game. It was a Monday night or a Sunday night game where the Chargers lost John Kondo, their then long snapper, and they could, you know, they were not a very good football team then. Have had some rough waters, one little bit of success, a lot of rough waters lately, and it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. Remember the Dolphin game away in 11. The Bills were on their downward spiral after the 5-2 starts. Eric Wood got hurt in Dallas, going after a guy, returning a pick towards ACL on a block below the knees. And they tried out Levitri at center, and it was a disaster. The guy could, you know, he could play some left tackle, was better at left guard, and they tried him at center, and it just couldn't snap the ball. Just couldn't do it. They had to kick Craig Urbick in there. It was a similar type of, you know, he was able to stabilize it then, but it was a similar type of thing. It was just couldn't snap the ball. They had nobody to long snap the ball. So that just goes on about the importance of it to him and to most coaches. Most people kind of roll their eyes when they hear that, special teams, but it is very true. It's one of those things we don't really think about till it bites us in the ass. I mean, obviously, remember the 13 finale against the Patriots in the rain where the team got gashed in the return game and everybody was calling for Crossman's head. So there you have it. So he's a guy who they needed corners. McDermott's defense is big on corners, and like it was stated in the press conference after the draft, if this guy plays 65-70% of the snaps on combined special teams and defense, he's a starter essentially. So that's potentially two. I mean, Phillips, you believe, is going to be a heavy rotation guy. He's going to play a lot of snaps, keep Kyle fresh, Starr fresh. So there's going to be a lot of churning in the middle of that defense, so that they don't get bullied and gashed. Because I know it's an old school mindset mentality. I do not like to see this team get bullied around the field. It really, when I have to sit here and like you guys do and watch them just get bitched around and just have teams run on them like just basically do what they want. Like, we could throw up, but we're just going to just maul you. It is a demoralizing thing to have a man or other men impose their will on you, and I don't like that. I don't like to see our football team treated like that in any shape, way, or form. So I'm very much in agreement with that, which goes to the next pick, leads right into it. Siren Neal, a guy played everywhere. Hybrid linebacker, played corner last year, more suited for safety. They said they were going to start him off at safety. Makes me think back to how they were really struggling last year to find that third safety. I mean, they were everywhere. Colt Anderson, his very short-lived Bills career, was always injured, even left the field injured, missed an interception against Jacksonville in the playoff game. So he's just a guy, his body was either at its end or was just truly never built for the NFL and had worn it out playing special teams, all those collisions. But you look at the guys, they tried everything. The Shamarko Thomases, they even brought back from the prior year's roster Robert Blanton. They rotated in Trey Elston a few times, made a few big plays for them, big hit. I believe he forced a fumble and had an interception in the Raider game to seal that. So they were really searching. They were really searching for that third safety. I believe I mentioned they couldn't sign Trey Lawson successfully last year. He is a free agent though, so who knows? Maybe they could revisit that. But Siren Neal, he provides them flexibility. Maybe win some sub packages, he can come down, play hybrid linebacker, safety. Maybe he can play some nickel corner on some bigger receivers or more or less athletic tight end until he sees how he fits in. Looks like a big hitter, a guy who's willing to go play the run. Definitely a guy who'll play on special teams, much like Tyron Johnson. So he fits a need, and the point of them playing special team is you truly want these guys to make your 46. You want them to not only be on the 53, you want them to make the roster on the game day roster. So you want these guys to be playing, gaining experience, and making your team better in the short and long term. And the only way you do that is by playing. Next pick, everybody seems to really love this pick. We don't really watch a lot of offensive lineman tape. I mean, this draft was weird in that it had one supremely talented all-world offensive lineman by most analysts, pundits, what you will, in Quentin Nelson, but he went much later. But then you see the Bills get Wyatt Teller, and he looked like a mauler himself, a guy who just looked like a road grader, good movement. Always seemed to be taking this guy 5-10 plus yards downfield and just burying them, driving them into the ground. Only gave up 4 sacks and run and pass sets in his entire career, I believe, according to Pro Football Focus. So an impressive guy and a young guard that this regime has brought in, and I think he's a guy who could be a sneaky starter. He could potentially be a guy who could start for them at the vacated spot of Richie Incognito, whose name I really just makes me sick to mention, and I truly mean that. So hopefully has the neck roll, he plays into all the stereotypes, has the long hair, not long, but just he looks like a bit like Andrew Norwell, a guy who just got the biggest contract for a guard in free agency from Jacksonville. So he could be a guy. He could be a guy. And I'm going to kind of lump the last 2 picks in. His name's escaping me right now. I'll get it right here. Ray McLeod. I had it right initially, and I just remember his father, Ricky Prohl, Austin Prohl's son. A guy obviously being very familiar with, second to last pick of the draft. Maybe he does his old friend a favor, but from the looks of this kid, he looks like that Patriot type of receiver, right? A guy who's got the sure hands, sneaky, made in the Danny Amendola, Julian Edelman, Wes Welker, Cole Beasley mode. Very shifty, sneaky, more quick than he is fast, versatile, can return punts. As a guy looks like he can do everything for you, along with Ray Armstrong, the same type of mold, a guy who can return punts, maybe get him on quick hitters, get him out in the open, maybe a guy or guys that can get onto the practice squad, who knows. But the receiver position for the Bills is very much in flux, and I think if you can get one of those guys to make an impact on the 46 game day as opposed to just the 53, that'll be massive. So there you have it. That is the 2018 NFL draft class. They have also filled the undrafted free agent signings. Four tackles. I can read you off some of the names. Gerhard DeBear, Mo Porter from Baylor, Wilson Bell from Auburn, and Ike Bogert from Iowa. So Iowa always seems to have some good offensive linemen. Bodiger, I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing the name. Ike Bodiger. And number 75 is, I always like that number on offensive lineman. I always did it. It makes me think about Howard Ballard. I just really like that number on an offensive lineman. A kicker, a guy who punted and kicked at Penn State, Tyler Davis. A couple of cornerbacks, Levi Wallace from Alabama, and Ryan Carter from Clemson. So two teams that have been in the national title game quite a bit in the last 3 to 4 years. Excuse me. Couple of ends. I think it's Matt Boson, TCU, kind of a hybrid guy, kind of a rush end. Can think of a guy who was similar to him, maybe looks like a Danny Batten type, maybe for them. Only they didn't draft this guy. Mike Love is more in the mold of a traditional DN, 6'4", 260 DN from South Florida. So again, who knows? One wide receiver, Robert Foster, real fast guy from Alabama. More of a straight line guy. I don't know if he has return ability. Then again, we'll see. They're more of a run heavy team. Had big time wide receiver and Calvin Ridley there. So we'll see how this all goes. But the roster, I believe, right now is at 86 or 87 players. So, and I recall last year they like keeping a little room to shuffle the back end of that. They didn't really always fill it to 90. The most I ever saw it as was 89. So I don't know if they're gonna put those spots or just keep them open for some more flexibility, so they're not just locked in, have to release a guy. Then you're just wasting money, unless the guy's worth having around. They're gonna have their rookie mini camp. Tryout guys will come in next week, I believe between Thursday, Friday, Saturday, somewhere around there, and we'll get to see all these guys in Bills uniforms. We'll get to see these guys moving around the field house, moving around the turf at New Era Field. That's going to be very exciting for us. I know I'm going to be excited. We're all going to just try to keep abreast as much as possible to hear any kind of positive or negative news. Hopefully, for our case, fingers crossed, all positive. But, just a long view opinions here by myself. Again, building the team through the middle, building the defense through the middle, having athletes at safety, rangy athletes, instinctive safeties, and we saw that they were able to identify those and have them play at a very high level. I mean, and we've all known the Jordan Poyer signing initially was just kind of like a shoulder shrug, and then to see that level of play, the man should have been in the Pro Bowl. Tremaine Edmunds, the level of athlete that he is now. Matt Milano, an experience, a year of experience. He's a really good athlete, a guy who played safety, but now is transitional linebacker in the NFL, fits the McDermott mold, very instinctive. So you're starting to see this unit really take shape. The level of play Trey White got, was telling my friend who I watched the draft with, at no point last year did I feel like we were watching a rookie corner, unlike when we all watched Stephon Gilmore, where you saw those boneheaded rookie mistakes, those lapses in concentration, just teams taking advantage of him constantly. And the only time we really saw that from Trey last year is when he gave up the big touchdown to AJ Green in Cincinnati, and that was really it. And AJ Green's as good a wide receiver as there is in the league. But building the team at the front, I mean, Trent Murphy, Harrison Phillips, Star Lotulelei. I mean, they brought in some other nondescript guys. The third rounder that was kind of fell out with the Giants a few years ago. I don't know, Awaya. I can't say his name, so I'm really Terrence Fede. Also, Teeny Palapoy. I can say his name, Palapoy. I can say his name. You know, he's Star's teammate in school at Utah. So again, I said this out loud on Twitter the other day that, you know, you look at a guy like Adolphus Washington, makes you think, is he long for this roster? Not their guy, kind of more maybe suited for the 3-4, a guy who played last year, but then you'd see him inactive on some of the games, and given the need that they had at that position, gives you some pause. You know, maybe he's a guy who's not long for this Bills roster. He's very much the, you know, whether he was Whaley's guy or more Rex's guy. I tend to think he was more Rex's guy because that was all defense. At guard, you got Wyatt Tiller. Maybe he's a sneaky starter. Maybe that puts Vladimir Ducas's job at jeopardy. Maybe a guy like John Miller, you know, maybe he's able to turn around with a new scheme, a new blocking scheme. So who knows? That's a position very much in flux right now. The interior offensive line, I think they're definitely going to want to get shored up for wherever the quarterback is, because it's not going to be as mobile a quarterback as Tyrod Taylor is and was for the Buffalo Bills. Now for the Cleveland Browns, obviously. But they're not total statues back there. I mean, A.J. McCarron's probably the least athletic. Peterman, along the same vein of athlete, and Josh Allen with his size is just another level of athlete. But again, the roster's far from done. There's going to be a lot more stuff to do. Like they said, the building process is 12 months long, which means it's never ending. And keep our fingers crossed. Knock on wood, no injuries. Knock on wood, they make some signings. Knock on wood, some of these guys, or most of these guys pan out, namely Josh Allen. Knock on wood again, that they're just able to find some guys that we don't expect to be good that end up being good. And that's a big part of a successful team. Maybe they go find a young running back somewhere that just blossoms for them, that they don't have to allocate a draft resource to. Or for the better part of, you know, one of these guys that they sign in undrafted free agency just comes out of nowhere and ends up being a Jason Peters caliber player for them that they can actually keep and is just a perennial Pro Bowler, and eventually he's going to be a Hall of Famer. That would be massive. That would be massive. So there you have it, Bills fans. Let me know what you think. The long-term view of building this team through the middle, having a plan for this quarterback, having a plan in place for him already, but taking the slow cooker approach, just putting him in the incubator, letting him learn. I think we're all comfortable with that, especially given this quarterback and maybe some of the questions that we all still have about him. I'm sure certainly still have about him. And we see positive things. We hear positive things about him. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some negative. He's going to make his mistakes. He's going to throw some interceptions. He's going to have some rookie plays. He's going to do this. We all need to get our head around it. There's going to be times where he makes his boneheaded plays, and he's going to need to make those to get better. You know, you can't grow unless you first fail. So that's it. Every learning process starts with a failure first. So hopefully he, you know, has his and he learns from them, and they become few and far between, less frequent. So let me know what you think, Bills fans. It's been again, it's been long. I know we all suffered from draft fatigue during the end of that last week, those last preceding days. It was very agonizing. Let me know what you guys think about the state of the team. Where do you think they need to address? I still think they need to find another receiver, particularly a veteran that piques my interest. I don't know of any right now, but they said that they'd keep abreast of, you know, we always see this happen, guys getting released, maybe a sneaky little trade here and there. They could pick up a guy, because I'm not, you know, you look at a guy like an Andre Holmes who didn't do much. I mean, him and Rod Street are kind of one and the same guy, in my opinion. I'd really like to see a couple of, Jeremy does nothing. Jeremy Curley does nothing for me, so I'd really like to see them pick up a veteran receiver. And another interesting note, a guy that they signed in undrafted free agency last year, Keith Tobridge, a tight end, who ended up getting hurt his ankle. They kept him on IR all last year in order to keep him, and he again comes back now healthy. Maybe he makes an impact on the team. Maybe he's a guy that makes the roster. Who knows? Jason Kroom in the same vein. He kind of made the rounds, got cut, came back to the roster. They kept him on. So we'll see what happens with this team. The final 53 we know has never is the final 53. Again, have a great weekend, Bills fans. Happy Sunday. It's beautiful outside here in North New Jersey. Hope it is by you too. And let's all just, let this set in. Let's try to keep positive mindsets. Because with every one of these quarterbacks, there's going to be questions. There's going to be angst, whether their deficiencies could be fixed, whether this guy could stop turning the ball over, or this guy, his ego is too big for his pants, or is too big for the room, or maybe he doesn't want to be in Buffalo, something to that effect. I mean, the scuttlebutts and all the noise about the Patriots taking a quarterback didn't happen until the 7th round. The Dolphins didn't take a quarterback at all. I think they signed one in undrafted free agency. Obviously, the Jets took who they took and Sam Darnold, and the Bills took who they took and Josh Allen. So, again, this is every team put their flag in the floor, nailed their colors to the mast, and said this is what we're going with in 2018. All right, Bills fans, let's hope this team and this organization's put together for us is very much a winning product and something that we can look forward to seeing on Sundays. Have a great one, guys, and take care.